before you've proven yourself, most people think you're crazy, and you just are so scrappy, and what you have is your belief in yourself and in your idea. You're trying 100 things and 99 ideas fail, and it's fine. You just kind of pick yourself up and you keep going.
Hey Foundr fam, have you ever wanted to create a successful app in the App Store? Do you have an app idea? Well, today we're speaking with Prerna Gupta, and she's the CEO and co-founder of Telepathic Inc. And she has created multiple apps that are #1 on the App Store. Collectively, her company, Telepathic Inc., has had over 1 billion users worldwide. So we're gonna find out, how is she doing this? Like, what does that actually take, and what lessons can you learn from her? So, Prerna, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. The first question I ask everyone that comes on is, how did you get your job? AKA, how did you find yourself doing the work you're doing today?
So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been building startups my entire career. It's been over 16 years now. So it's the only thing I know how to do. And I started basically when I was 6 months out of college in 2005. I did actually have a normal job, quote unquote, before then. So right after graduating, I took a job as a management consultant here in San Francisco. And I was there for 6 months and just was feeling kind of like a cog in a wheel, basically. And I really wanted to have direct impact and create my own products and reach people directly. And so I wanted to get closer to entrepreneurship. I made a jump into VC. I got a job at a venture capital firm based here in Silicon Valley, and I was there for 6 weeks. And I realized this wasn't really solving my problems. I wanted to be a founder. That's who I am. So I quit my second job, in the course of about 8 months, and just decided to dive right into entrepreneurship. And I started my first company at the age of 22.
Awesome. And can you tell us more about that first company and how'd that all come about?
Yeah. So the first company was a social networking site for Indians called Yari.com. Yari means friendship. And it was summer of 2005. Facebook had very recently raised their $12 million Series A. And Facebook was just in a few colleges back then. Most people thought it was crazy that anyone was investing that much money into something like a social networking site. But I had been on it for a few months and was seeing the usage amongst my friends and felt like this was something that was going to be massive all over the world. So I decided to move to India to start basically the Facebook of India. I co-founded the company with the person who was then my boyfriend. He's now my husband and co-founder for life. And his name is Parag. He's basically, I'm the CEO, he's the CTO. We're sort of yin and yang, and it's been a great partnership. So we moved to India, started Yari.com. When we got there, it was such an uphill battle. We couldn't raise funding. No one, we got meetings with all the VCs in India at the time, but the objections were, people in India are too conservative. No one's going to put their picture up online. And which is crazy because India is like one of the biggest markets for Facebook now. But we stuck with it for 4 years and had some ups and downs, got 2 million users at one point. And then of course, Facebook entered India and totally ate our lunch. And so we ended up failing with that first startup, but that was an incredible experience. And I wouldn't be where I am today without having started that first company.
Yeah, wow, interesting. And you've started many other companies. I'd love to talk about, fast forward today, Hooked, seeing your guys' ads. Can you tell us a little bit more about the product? How did that come about? When did you start it?
Yeah. So Hooked is the #1 storytelling platform for Gen Z. We basically tell stories in mobile-friendly formats, 3 formats, text, audio, and video. And we reach 100 million viewers around the world now. But we didn't start there. We started with just an idea. And the idea actually came about when my husband and I were traveling after selling our last company. We wanted to just kind of get back into a creative mindset. And so we decided to take off. We left Silicon Valley, traveled all over the world, traveled for 1.5 years. And while we were traveling, we started to write a novel for young adults. It's a sci-fi fantasy trilogy set in Silicon Valley in the future. And it's just something that we had been dreaming of writing for a long time. And as we were writing, we started to just think more about storytelling and how, what's happening in the world of storytelling. The way that we live our lives today has completely changed in the past 10 years. And the first touch point for almost anything now is our mobile phone. But we felt like the storytelling industry, whether you look at book publishing or Hollywood, hadn't really figured out how to, adapt to that change and how to tell stories for our mobile world. And so we came back from our travels and just decided to reimagine storytelling for our mobile first generation. And that was how Hooked started.
Wow. And you guys, you have a parent company, Telepathic Inc. And, you've had over a billion users across like your apps. Like that is insane. Like, why do you think that, like, how have you had that like insane growth? Because the app business is hard. Like a lot of people watching this might have an idea for an app. Why do you think you're getting it right so often?
So it's a great question. The app business is very, very hard. I've been building apps since the early days of the App Store. I launched my first app in 2009. And I've launched dozens of apps, and I've had many failures and a handful of successes to kind of get to that, billion users number. And the key I think with any kind of building any kind of product, but it's especially important when you're doing mobile apps, is being very data driven and iterative about the user experience. And the reason that this is especially important on mobile is because you are working with such a small screen, and the real estate that you have, the attention that you have, the time that you have to convince a user to use your app, and the space that you have to actually communicate what your app is about is so small. And so the only way to really get that right is to build, taking from the Lean Startup book, Eric Ries, who's one of our investors and wrote this amazing, basically Bible for, any founder of the Lean Startup, taking, some ideas from his book, minimum viable product, create a minimum viable product, get something out fast into the hands of your users, use data to really see what's working and what's not, and iterate. That has been the greatest secret to our success. And, through many failures, that's kind of what's gotten us to where we are.
Yeah, I see. And why do you think most apps fail? Like what do you see as like the number one thing that people are getting wrong, or you've seen it in your journey as well? Because you said you have had some failures too on the app, like mobile apps front.
Absolutely.
Or apps, yeah.
I think the biggest reason apps fail is trying to do too much at once. So, and I think this happens, especially a lot of times when you're building your first product, you have this grand vision for this company that you want to build, and you want it to do eventually, you want to build a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that does, hundreds of things. But when you're starting out, you don't want to do hundreds of things. You want to do one thing really, really well. One thing better than anybody else can do it. And like I said, especially on a mobile screen, when you've got such a tiny, such small real estate to convince your users to spend time with you, don't throw in everything but the kitchen sink. Find one feature and focus your app around that one feature and do it better than anybody else. That's the key. And one of the things that we learned after a few failures and really started to get right.
Yeah, I see. And what about Songify? Like, can you tell like our audience about that? Like when you launched it, it was number one app in the App Store. Like, how did that feel? And like, how did you get that right?
Yeah. So Songify was when we were creating music apps, my husband and I, we launched that app in 2011. And it was really the result of a lot of iteration. Songify was an app where you speak into the phone, and it'll process your voice and turn anything you say into a song, hence the name Songify. And we had launched an app previously, which was a singing app called La Di Da, which also used machine learning technology, where you sing and it'll create music to match anything you sing. And we had some decent success with that. It was a top 100 app, and we got like a few 100,000 downloads on it, and got good response. But what we found was that we weren't getting enough mass market usage because people were really afraid to sing. You know, people who are singers love to sing, but vast majority of people really were afraid to sing. They didn't have confidence in their voice. And so that feedback from users gave us the idea to come up with something that was so simple. You know, we wanted to give people the joy of hearing their voice singing, but hearing themselves sing, but it's so simple that anyone can do it. You just talk and it turns what you say into a song. That app, when we launched it, I believe, on a Thursday in 2011, and it kind of started to pick up steam, and then, you know, rose up the charts a little bit on Thursday, a little bit more on Friday. And when I woke up Saturday morning, it was the #1 app in the world. And that was kind of the moment for me, I think, in my career it was really a pivotal moment. You know, I had been struggling for a long time, basically, as a founder to really have a hit. And that was our hit. That was our moment. And it was just an exhilarating feeling. It was incredible. Really kind of took us by surprise. It was a very gratifying moment, but in a lot of ways, you know, and I can talk about this more, but then a lot of stress came in as well because we had something to lose suddenly.
Let's talk about that. Like, can you tell me more?
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting when you make that flip. In the beginning, you're kind of nobody, right? And you just have an idea and you're so passionate. Most people just kind of don't give you the time of day. And, you know, and that's just the structure. I mean, you know, you have to prove yourself. And before you've proven yourself, most people think you're crazy, and you just are so scrappy. And what you have is your belief in yourself and in your idea. And you don't have anything to lose. And so you give it your all and you don't care, you know, when you get rejected or when you're trying 100 things and, you know, 99 ideas fail, and it's fine. You just kind of pick yourself up and you keep going. But suddenly when you've had that first taste of success, you know, people notice. Everyone kind of comes out of the woodworks. You know, I was being invited on to national television programs to demo the app, and there was so much interest from investors, and there were all these opportunities presented to me suddenly. And we had this app at the top of the charts, and now we had to figure out how do we make the most of this momentum? How do we build a business out of this? How do we keep people coming back to the app? How do we use this to raise funding on the right terms? And what do we do next? And it's really, it's a different phase in the Foundr journey. And you think that when you start out, you're like, okay, as an app developer, if I could have the #1 app in the world, like that would be the most amazing feeling. Then I've made it, you know? And then you get there and you realize that's just the beginning. And the next phase is even harder. But that's also part of the fun and just kind of, I think, the journey of life. Like, you know, it never gets easier. It's just it gets more challenging and you grow more at each stage.
So I'm curious, like after your success on early days Songify, you wrote this awesome article on Vogue, and you talked about being a digital nomad for a year shortly after. Like, what happened there? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this was after Songify. We ended up one of the people who reached out to us at that time was a company that was our biggest competitor. They're a company called Smule, which is now the largest developer of music creation apps around the world. And they reached out and we started talking, and one thing led to another, and eventually they bought our company, which was a life-changing experience, you know, for us. Kind of gave us financial independence and sort of really gave us that first big win as founders. We stayed on with Smule for a couple of years. And at the end of that period, I think we started to just, I think we just started to, it's weird, but my husband and I are both creators. You know, I mean, we're tech people, and we're, you know, he's an engineer and, you know, I'm a business person, but at the same time, what really brought us together and what motivates us is making art. We're both musicians. I've been writing my entire life. And we felt like after kind of going through this exhausting journey of being, you know, doing this tech startup, we just wanted to get back into a creative mindset. And we also just sort of felt ourselves getting sucked into this mentality of, you make a certain amount of money and then you feel like, and that was the money that you set out to make at the beginning, and you make it, and then you're like, but I need 10 times more than that. And and it's like, for what? Why do you need 10 times more than that? What is that money going to buy you? It's not going to buy you more happiness. And I think we just started to realize that we were getting sucked into that feeling of like, we don't have enough money, which was crazy. And we were just like, this is not the way to live life. And so we just decided to donate all of our stuff, leave Silicon Valley, and go be nomads for a while. And we didn't have a plan. We just bought a one-way ticket to this surf town in Costa Rica, which is one of our favorite places in the world. And we had one bag and our laptops basically, and my husband's instrument. He's a musician, and that was it. And then we just kind of took it from there, and it was an amazing journey. We ended up traveling for 1.5 years actually. And through that journey, somehow came hooked.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious around just the Smule acquisition. I'm familiar with that platform. I've played around with it and have done some rap battles, but that's not something that I want to talk about because it's embarrassing. But can you tell us about like that acquisition? Can you share kind of what can you share there, even for anyone that is watching this that perhaps has aspirations to perhaps sell their app? Like, what was the outcome there?
Yeah. Very happy to share just how that whole thing went down. And I think it's a great question because it's really hard, especially as a first-time founder, to know how to make something like that happen. And really what I learned through that experience is the best way to do it is first collaborate, basically. And so the best acquisitions really happen organically, and it's better to kind of try before you buy. And so basically what happened was, the CEO of Smule, Jeff Smith, who's a brilliant, very creative founder himself, reached out and just said, Songify is awesome. Congrats. Would love to see if, like your audience and our audience seems similar and we have complementary apps. Would love to see if your audience is interested in our app, Magic Piano, and vice versa. And so we basically just did a collaboration where we cross-promoted each other's apps in a very organic way. It didn't feel like an ad. And we saw really, really strong conversion, basically. And so there was clearly a lot of overlap in terms of the demand, for our products with these audiences that we had built. And that is what led to a conversation around, hey, should we join forces and what would that look like? And so, that I think it's just a much better way. You don't want to go out and try to sell yourself. Obviously, some companies do that and they hire investment banks and it's a whole thing. But especially as a startup, as a small startup, and where you're an app, it's going to be a lot better if you just go out there and get to know people and let partnerships develop organically. And where there's a really good fit, it'll be clear, and then that will lead to an acquisition discussion.
I see. And when it comes to Hooked, I'd love to go much deeper on that because, I'm sure people are really curious because very well-known product. How did you come up with the idea? You said was it conceived on this Costa Rica trip, and then what was next? How do you bring something like that to life?
Yeah, it was the idea for Hooked. The chat fiction app was conceived after we officially started the company. So the idea, basically, when we were traveling, was a very high level idea that we want to rethink storytelling for the mobile phone and for younger generations, basically. And how do you do that? And we started off with this objective. The idea was, okay, we were traveling, we were writing this book, this novel for teens, and people used to say, well, that's cute, but what's the point? Teens don't read anymore. Reading is dying. And that was kind of, I think, hearing that again and again was really the thing that was like, okay, that's a challenge. It doesn't make sense that reading is dying. Reading stories are so fundamental to us as humans, especially when you're a teenager. The coming of age stories are so formative, in those years. And so we challenged ourselves. how can we use what we know about creating addictive mobile experiences to make reading engaging on the phone? And so that was kind of the idea. We came back from our travels. We raised a little bit of seed funding from investors who had invested in us before and had a good experience with us. And then we just set out to kind of crack that problem. And our hypothesis was that, the reason reading is dying is because teens are spending all of their time on the mobile phone, and you're kind of competing for their attention with social media feeds. They're on social media all day long. Obviously, no one's going to sit down and read a 100,000-page novel when they can just be on Instagram all day long. They're not going to do that. But what if you could take a story and make it as engaging as an Instagram post? And how do you do that? And so that was really our goal. And we didn't know exactly how to do that. We started off with an idea that didn't work, which was tell image-driven stories, basically kind of reimagining comic books, but making them for the phone. And we tried creating some comic book type stories for, mobile consumption. And we weren't really getting good engagement. And we were very data-driven. So we were looking at the data and it just wasn't telling us what we wanted to see. And then we just had this idea of, people are spending their lives, they're telling their own stories through text messaging. What if we tried telling a fictional story that way? And we wrote like a 1,000-word story. And the first thing we wrote, just the engagement was like through the roof. It was crazy high retention. 85% of people that started the story finished it, which was the highest retention we'd ever seen on anything we built. And that was like, okay, we're on to something here. And that was kind of how it happened.
How long did it take for you guys to work out, we're onto something? You had your first iteration and then that was your second? Or like I've said many iterations in between, but yeah.
Yeah, so we basically started essentially in January of 2015 with with this hypothesis and trying to figure out how do we solve this problem. And we had the insight for chat fiction in May of that year. So it took us 5 months of experimenting and trying a bunch of things that basically weren't working. But during that time, we were also building our data pipeline and figuring out how to test things. And we were establishing benchmarks so that by the time we had our kind of light bulb moment, we knew it was a hit, because we had all this data that we had all these things that we tested that hadn't worked. And so we really had something to compare it against. And then we spent the next several months basically getting more content. We wrote our first story ourselves. We wanted to build, a full catalog, a platform. And so we reached out to writers, basically fiction writers all around the country, and got them to submit stories to us in this new format. And we compiled a few hundred stories through that time. And then we launched our app in September of 2015. And then we spent a year iterating on that. And it took a long time. We had a little bit of success, and then, kind of like we weren't getting really anywhere. And we spent over a year before, just iterating and improving things, expanding our catalog. And it was really in the fall of 2016 that things started to take off. And then December of 2016 was when Hooked hit the #1 spot on the App Store.
Yeah, okay, wow. And so it sounds like you guys have a bit of a formula to this of like creating really kind of sticky, hot apps. Just for anyone like watching this right now, like just for context, how big is your catalog? Where is Hooked at now? Just fast forward to like 2021.
Yeah, so we have about, I think, 10,000 stories now in the Hooked fiction app, and they range from anywhere from 1,000 words, so very short, to now we have things that are basically the length of TV scripts or movie scripts. And we've worked with writers all over the world. And we recently have started to take some of our top stories and actually produce them into mobile movies and TV shows. And we call it Hooked TV. And this was kind of our vision long term, to take the top stories and really kind of rethink Hollywood as well for mobile. And it's been working really well. And we've built a big audience and loyal audience now for our content, which has been an incredible journey, but hopefully we're just getting started.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. So in many ways, you guys are kind of becoming a media company.
That's exactly right. We're basically a data-driven media company, and really focused on mobile, the mobile experience and the mobile user.
So look, it is obvious, like you've had incredible success with building mobile apps and products. For anyone watching this right now that has an app idea, like grassroots, where should they start? What should they be thinking about from your perspective?
Yep. So the number one thing is to really create, like I said, your minimum viable product. And obviously, if you're a developer, that's a lot easier. If you're a mobile developer, an engineer, you can just build it. But most people who have ideas aren't mobile developers. But it's, I think that you can get really far with envisioning your product just by making mocks. And you can use very simple programs. You can use PowerPoint or Keynote. There's a great design tool called Figma online, which you can use. So just use any product, that you're comfortable with to just really map out your screens, the screens of your app, your minimum viable product. If you had a developer today, what would you build? And keep it simple. Less is more. Build one feature. Don't build 100 features. Build one feature, keep it simple, and just map out your screens and really the user interface for your product. That's the first place to start. And that will tell you, what team do you need to build? Who do you need to actually help you execute on that and get an app out up in the App Store?
And how do you know if you're onto something? Like, how do you know? Like, because it seems like you guys don't get it right out the gate, right? You and your husband, you don't get it right out the gate. It's more kind of, you're taking very small baby steps. And I think sometimes people, they have this kind of idea hallucination, or they fall in love with the idea and they're so set on that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important to adapt, right? And because if you have one idea and you're set on it, it might not be exactly right, and you want to be able to adapt. And so our whole thing is we start with a very high level idea, a hypothesis, and we really approach it as almost like a scientific experiment. There's this belief that we have about the world and about human nature and some demand that's out there that's not being met. And we believe that we can create a product that meets that demand, but we don't know exactly what that product is. And so our science experiment is figuring out, what is that product? And you do that by creating spending the least amount of time and the least amount of resources getting some data that will tell you, am I on the right track? And how do I adjust where I'm going, basically, to get to where I want to be? And so for us, that started with Hooked. Actually, I told you about the comic book idea, but before we even built that, what we actually did was we took traditional novels, put them up. We built this really scrappy, not very well designed, mobile optimized website, put traditional novels on there, drove a few hundred people to those novels from ads, basically on Facebook, and looked at the data to show us what happens when people try and read normal novels on the phone. And that was actually, in a way, what told us we're on the right track, sort of. Basically, we saw that when you put normal novels on the phone, you get terrible engagement. No one wants to read it. Even if they click on the ad, they see this wall of text and they read a few sentences and they're gone, basically. And so what we learned from that was two things. People were clicking on our ads. We actually had a very good click-through rate on our ads, which said, okay, there is demand for this, but the retention or engagement on the existing solution, which is normal novels, was terrible. And so that told us, there's something here. There's a kernel of something in our idea, but the current solution isn't great. And we need to come up with something better. And then we started to iterate. We tried the comic book thing. We ran more ads. Again, we saw great click through on the ads. we didn't see a big improvement in retention. And then we tried and tried and tried. And then eventually when we hit on a chat fiction, that really, was like the thing, like this totally works. So getting little bits of data along the way will tell you if you're on the right track or if you're not. And there's one other thing actually, which is very different from data, which is, you're always pitching to somebody, whether it's VCs, your early investors, or co-founders or designers you're going to work with, whoever it is, you're always pitching your idea. And you get qualitative feedback along the way, and you get other ideas along the way, and you pick it up. When you're onto something, you can tell when you tell someone your idea, their eyes will light up, and they'll say, I want that, I would use that, I can't wait for that to be out in the world. And when there's not something to your idea, you won't get that feedback. And so that's, I think, an important part of the process is just talking about it. Tell anyone who will listen about your idea. Don't worry, no one's going to steal it. It's too hard to get right. Like, don't worry about people stealing it. Just talk about it and see what's the kind of response you're getting. And you'll have a sixth sense, if you're honest with yourself, about whether there's something to your idea.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you shared about kind of using Facebook ads, using that as a kind of traffic source, looking at the data, and then just testing hypotheses. That was awesome. Thank you. You talked about just before kind of pitching and, like speaking to investors. You've had some very high-profile celebrities invest in Hooked, like Mariah Carey, Jamie Foxx, Ashton Kutcher. How did, any crazy, interesting stories you could share around how any of those came about? It's pretty impressive.
Thanks. Thanks. We didn't know any celebrities when we started. It just sort of happened, and it's not something that we were expecting to happen. But basically, our first celebrity investor was Ashton Kutcher, and we met him, just at there's this kind of club here in San Francisco called the Battery. And anyways, we were there and he was there, and we sort of met, and I think he'd already heard about Hooked through some of our other investors, and we just really hit it off. And I think I was really blown away actually by how smart Ashton is. I think a lot of times we tend to assume that celebrities and actors are not very intellectual. And I think one thing that I've learned is that the people at the top of their game are very, very intelligent, in addition to being very talented at what they do. And he just totally got it. He saw the vision. He understood what we were trying to do, and we clicked. And he asked to invest, and of course we said yes. And then it just sort of grew through word of mouth, actually, like through our investors. After that, other celebrities wanted to invest, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Crazy. So you can meet your future investor at like a club.
Maybe don't. Yeah, I guess. But I think the moral of the story is just kind of like put yourself out there. You never know who you're going to meet where, and it's that serendipity, I think. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, how to get acquired. Like, it's all part of the same thing. Just put yourself out there, and the best connections just happen organically when two people really kind of hit it off.
Yeah, no, look, I know that like San Fran is pretty wild like that. Like, you can meet, like, I have many friends in San Fran. I've heard many stories, you can meet people at a bar or a club, and like, it's the hub, right?
Exactly. It's the hub. And, one of the things, people say a lot of bad things about Silicon Valley and, the Bay Area or whatever, but one of the reasons I love it here, and I just really appreciate being a part of, I really view Silicon Valley as a global community. It's not even about where we are physically, it's just all of us who are doing tech startups are a part of Silicon Valley. But the thing that blows me away day in and day out is how accessible people are, and really how humble they are. We have so many billionaires that are in our investors, and other billionaires that I've met that didn't end up investing, but 9 times out of 10, they will be so down to earth and, so respectful, of me, and I'm nobody compared to them. And I've had that experience throughout my career. And it's just incredible that people who are so successful and so far ahead in their careers will take time to talk to people starting out and really, value your intelligence and your abilities and what they see as your potential, even when it hasn't been proven yet. And I think that's something that's really special about the Silicon Valley community that doesn't exist as much in other industries. So take advantage of it, because it's, reach out, because people will respond. And, not everyone will, but they'll, when there's a spark there, sometimes there'll be a spark and a connection, and they'll give you a shot, even if you haven't been proven yet.
That's a good point you make. Like, yeah, there is a really big pay it forward model. It is quite prevalent for successful founders. Not always, but yes, you never know, right? Especially, I think it's important if you actually have something to show, or you are currently working on something. That's something that I have seen. Like, if you have nothing to show, it's pure aspirations, you haven't got that, like, you don't have something, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's different. But if you're on the journey, you have something to show, you're hungry, pay it forward model in like startup community is very, very powerful.
Yes, and that's a great distinction, and I think an important one. Don't just reach out and say, hey, like, I really respect you, I'd love to chat, like, no one's going to respond to that. But when you have something that you've already poured your heart and soul into, and you have something to show, you have a demonstration, some demo, something, you'd be surprised by how many people will pay it forward and respond.
Yeah, because I think as well, these founders that have had success, they see something in that person as well. Like, you see yourself a little bit in that person, and you want to, exactly. you know the pains, right? You know how hard it is. So if you could just give even 15 minutes, 20 minutes, like, you could change that person's world. And yeah. Exactly. We'll work towards wrapping up. This has been fantastic. Just about Hooked, like, what excites you? What's next? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. So my vision, you said we're a media company, and that's my vision. I want to be one of the biggest media companies of all time. I want to be the next Disney or the next Netflix. That's my goal. And I really started this company, when I was on my journey as a creator. And, I was writing this, and I still am, this sci-fi fantasy novel. And it's unusual in that the protagonist is an Indian female, and there still has not been a major sci-fi fantasy franchise with an Indian female protagonist. And what I see, the opportunity that I see in my vision, and the reason I'm doing this, is to really give voice to diverse creators and diverse stories. And I think we do that by going direct, pairing creators directly with their audience, basically pairing great stories directly with their audience. And that's why I've built Hooked. And that's my goal. I want to create these, hopefully eventually multi-billion-dollar franchises that really tell canonical heroes' journey stories, but tell them from diverse perspectives. And it's a lifelong journey for me. I'm just starting out. It's, I want to be doing the rest of my life. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, wow, that's an incredible vision. So then it sounds like, this is my last question, then we'll move to the hot seat round. It sounds like you have no intention of selling?
No, I hope we never have to sell, that's my goal. I want to just run this company forever, and, maybe we go public at some point. I don't know. We're a long ways away from that. Just want to kind of keep going, keep building it brick by brick. I can't imagine really wanting to do anything other than this.
Yeah, no, look, I really respect that. That's amazing. Okay, well, look, we'll work towards wrapping up. We've got something called the hot seat round, where I'll ask you a few questions, want to answer them in 30 seconds to a minute. I've got 4 questions. I'm just reading them from the screen here, and and then we'll wrap up because I'm conscious of time. All right, first question. If you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, hopefully you consider this an accurate response, but my answer is J.K. Rowling. And I know you don't think of her as a traditional, founder or entrepreneur, but she is a billionaire based on this amazing product that she created, which is Harry Potter. And I really admire what she has built. And I also think what's incredible about it is that most of it came from just one person, just her. And, as founders, we sort of glamorize this idea of building companies with thousands of people. But it really fascinates me how much impact one person can have to create IP that literally, generates billions of dollars and reaches everyone around the world. So I would love to have dinner with J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. What's one app that came out that you thought, I wish I'd done that?
I gotta say Clubhouse. I mean, it's brilliant. The timing was brilliant. They did such an amazing job. I mean, they're amazing product people. They just got everything right between the product, the building a community, and just the timing. Everything was awesome. And, kudos to them. They're really amazing, down to earth people, and they deserve it. And definitely that was one that was like, my husband and I are also audio people. We're musicians. And so it was definitely one to that would have been cool.
Awesome. What's one trait that every entrepreneur needs to find success from your experience?
Resilience. It is a marathon. You are going to get knocked down again and again. And, the only time you fail is when you give up. And so the most important thing is being able to pick yourself back up and keep going and keep pushing till you achieve your vision.
Love it. Last question. Who do you look up to? Who are your mentors?
My mentors, I mean, there are two categories. And so in the business world, it's really my investors and my advisors. I've been very fortunate to create a strong network over the course of my career. I have over 70 investors currently in my current startup in Hooked, and then just advisors, even informal advisors. Some of them were just friends and then ended up investing in Hooked eventually. And so I look up to all of them, and they come from so many different places, whether they're app developers or investors or people in Hollywood, just very, very different walks of life. And I reach out to them on a regular basis just to get advice on different things. And that's one category. But the other category is really my family. It's my parents and my siblings and my husband's siblings and, even their kids. I really, really value every single person. Is, I feel like I have been taught through my family to keep my priorities straight, basically, and remember that really what matters in life is love and living a good life and living a good life day to day. And it's not everyone in my family is very ambitious and they're very intelligent and they're successful, but I have been taught to never let your ambition get in the way of being a good person and living a good life. And I look up to them every single day for that. And that really helps kind of keep me grounded and brings a lot of joy in my life.
Yeah, wow. I really resonate and respect that. Well, look, won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much, Prerna. That was like an incredible interview. Thank you for being so giving with your time and vulnerable and just sharing so much awesome advice. We will wrap there, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan. It was a pleasure. You have such good energy and it was really, really fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, hope you're loving our videos and that you're getting heaps of value from them. If you are, make sure to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe to join the Foundr fam. If you did enjoy this video and want to continue to master your skills, make sure you click here to access your free training now, where we'll go into way more depth with this founder.